Our very special guest for this segment of Reaching Out is our very good friend, State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. Welcome back to Reaching Out.
Greg, it's wonderful to be back on your show.
Thank you. I guess we should start out with the pension funds, how well they're doing and what's going on with the pension fund and what does that mean to people in New York State?
Yeah, well, it's been a difficult investment environment of late, as we all know. You can appreciate it with your pension funds. The up and downs of the markets, the volatility that we've seen, really since towards the end of 2015, certainly has continued into 2016. The good news is for most recent weeks, there seems to have been a pretty strong bounce back in a positive way. So, I think to the extent that we still have a big part of our portfolio tied to public equities, to stocks that we're all familiar with, where the market goes is still very, very important to us. That being said, we went into the fiscal year of 2015, 2016 in a very strong position with our pension fund. And just like the New York City funds and the State Teachers Fund, our fund has benefited from a number of years of positive return. So even if this year will be a little off, and I don't expect that we're going to make our number this year, we lowered our assumed rate of return to 7%, which is what the city has as well. But it's going to be lower than that. I've kind of signaled that already, even though the numbers aren't in yet for us. We're still building on a number of years of positive return. So our fund, like the other New York plans, compared to other state pension funds and city plans across the country, we're in much better shape here in New York. So we can weather the tough times. We're well positioned for the long haul. So from a taxpayer perspective, we have been cutting the rates for the past 3 years. Whether I'm going to be able to do that again this year, I don't know. But the bottom line for our public workers and public retirees, their pensions are safe and secure. And for our taxpayers, we have confidence that we'll be able to hopefully have stability and hopefully down the road some more declines in the rate.
Well, tell us what that means, because I read somewhere where you had lowered the pension payments for some of the municipalities in New York State. Can you tell us some of those lowering of rates and what that meant to those small municipalities?
Well, it meant a lot because right after the global financial crisis, the rates went up significantly. And we have been able to decrease the rates across the board. So, of course, every municipality's bill may be a little different depending on what the employee profile is. And as you know, Greg, we've had big changes in New York in recent years with the new tiers. So for more recent hires, the benefit level is lower. If you're in a municipality, let's say a village or a town that's had a big turnover, and you have more new employees at the new tiers, your bill will go down even faster. But last year, the decrease, I think, was about 15%. So we're not down to where it was back in 2008, but certainly we are headed in the right direction. What that means for localities is that relieves some of that pressure of the increased pension payouts that have been required, contribution payouts. And that means more flexibility for their local budget. So it's been good news for school districts, for counties, towns, cities across New York State. And New York City's had a similar benefit. The other challenge, though, besides the market, is that we've had to update what we call our mortality tables, because people are living longer. So you need to now anticipate longer payouts for the pensions. The city, I think, is in the process of doing that. This year, we did it a year earlier. So whenever you're coming up with that final calculation of what you're going to have as your contribution rate that the government employers have to pay, a lot of factors go into it. Sometimes people think it's only the investment return, but there are many other factors as well. So, it's a little bit of a rough patch now because of the markets. But again, it's nowhere near what it was in 08 and 09 when we lost all that money. People shouldn't think that this current volatile market is anything like that. And I think we're well positioned for the future.
And part of your duties, we're coming up on April, that famous budget, the on-time state budget.
Yeah.
Part of your job description and part of your duties are to go over the budget that the state puts forward. Have you been able to do that so far?
Well, we put out a very detailed analysis, some 100 pages. Sometimes they're a little longer than perhaps I'd like, but of the governor's budget proposal. And, what we found, Greg, and we've been saying it for a while, the state's in the best budget position it's been in a long time. And I give credit to the governor and the legislature for making some smarter decisions, especially on the front end of our budget process over a number of years. But we did see some risks in the out years particularly. We always express concern about the reliance on debt that we have in New York State. Debt service is an expense area where you're paying for old bills, and it takes away the opportunity to spend money on current programs that people would like to see. So our concerns were less in the short run because the stronger economy in New York State has revenues coming in a certainly on target with projections, if not higher. But the decisions that are going to be made today are going to have out-year budget implications, especially with some of the big-ticket items, Medicaid, school aid, and so on. So we want to make sure that the legislature, as they're finalizing the budget with the governor, that they're cognizant of not only decisions made to deal with this year's budget coming up, starting on April 1st, but also for the out years. So what we'll do then, after the budget is concluded and the governor signs off on it, we'll do another analysis on the adopted budget. Because, right now they're really dealing with proposals and concepts. We're also concerned in the budget proposal there seem to be some areas where more responsibility is being given to some public authorities, and even the creation of some new entities that we think it makes it not as transparent and accountable in terms of some of the decision-making, how money's being spent. There, again, seems to be a reliance on some undefined lump sums in the budget that, again, we think needs more clarity in terms of where's the money really going, what's the accountability. So a budget document, besides the dollars and cents, also lays out a lot about policy and a lot about governance. So as always on our website, we have our 100-page report. If your viewers and listeners are inclined to check that out, and then after the budget is signed by the governor, we'll have also a detailed analysis of what's actually agreed to.
There are a lot of New Yorkers that are still having it tough. Yeah. And do you have any advice for them? Because last time you were here, you also told them about your program, Unclaimed Funds.
Oh,
do you
always.
have anything? Yeah.
Always. Well, certainly let's get a pitch for that. I always say, when you have nothing to do, go to our website, whatever your search engine, New York State Comptroller, click on Unclaimed Funds. As we talked about before, and I'm glad you reminded me, we've got like $14 billion worth of accounts. And you never know. The typical recovery is $50, $100, but sometimes it's much more than that, in the many thousands. This is money that you got separated from an old bank account. Maybe you moved and the bank lost track of you, an old financial account, a healthcare check, insurance check that wasn't cashed. So many of your listeners and viewers will have some attachment either in their own name or in a family member's name. Could even be a deceased relative, and we might need a little more documentation for you to get that money. So certainly accessing your money that we're holding that was lost, and there's no fee for this, that's one important step to take. Another area that we're directly involved in is saving for higher education. Everybody knows the great expense of colleges. And, for those who are listening or viewing who have a child in the family, even perhaps a newborn, again, you can look at our website. The 529 College Savings Plan is a great way to save with some tax benefits for you. Start early in a child's life. Whether you're a parent or a grandparent or anybody that has a child that they care about can open one of these accounts for as little as $25. And the years go by fast, right? And then, and that money grows, and then you have a nice nest egg to help pay for higher education, because that's one of the costs that's really burdening many families today. And the other bit of advice I would say is that have some optimism. If perhaps you've been unemployed or underemployed, particularly in a downstate area, New York City particularly, but Long Island as well. We are starting to see that the hiring is sustained, and there are more opportunities than there were just a few years ago. You may have to knock on a few more doors, but the times are better. Our challenge from a state perspective is we have many regions, Binghamton, Utica, Central New York, Southern Tier, parts of the North Country. They're not bouncing back as well as downstate is. So be optimistic if you can be. Knock on every door. Put money aside if you got someone in the family who needs college for that 529 plan, and look for unclaimed funds. You never know if you got some money there.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment of Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President, Local 237 Teamsters. Our very special guest was New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. Thank you once again for coming on Reaching Out.
Thanks, Greg. Always a pleasure.